Why do some guys in the gym seem to make progress for years, but you see other guys that just spin their wheels and they seem to be going to the gym just to achieve nothing? The answer is actually progressive overload, but most people seem to misunderstand what progressive overload is. I'm Jack, owner of Relentless Pursuit Coaching. I help lads like yourself take the guesswork out of their training and nutrition and help them build their dream physiques. Let me take you back to when I started lifting, when I thought that adding 2.5 kilograms to the bar every single week was what was going to get me to my end goal. Obviously, it didn't take me long to realise that it's not that simple. If you could just add 2.5 kg every single week, we'd all be deadlifting 500 kilo and breaking records in no time, in a matter of years. So here's what progressive overload is not. Progressive overload is not just adding weight to the bar every single session. Again, if it was that simple, then we'd all be deadlifting 500 kilogram within the matter of years. Progressive overload is also not what is building the muscle tissue itself. Your body doesn't give a shit about what weight is on the bar or how many reps you do. What actually builds the muscle is training hard, applying that progressive stimulus over time. It is not the logbooking and progression itself. So let's get to the good stuff. What is progressive overload? Well, progressive overload is actually proof that your body is adapting to the stimulus that you're providing it. It's what you call a lagging indicator, which means that the adaptation that you want, which is building muscle, comes before you see progress on the bar. You build the muscle and then you see weight on the bar increase or doing more reps, etc. Think of it like a delayed reaction. Your body doesn't progress instantly, it doesn't build muscle instantly. It takes time to develop the connective tissues for your body to actually solidify that muscle. But over time, you should see the weight on the bar increasing and you should see yourself doing more reps and having better form and better execution with that same weight, which means that that strength has to have come from somewhere. It has to have come from building muscle. So how do you actually progress? I used to get frustrated that I couldn't add 5 kilogram onto my deadlift or onto my bench press every single week. But once I understood that progressive overload was more than just, again, the weight that you add on the bar, everything clicked for me. So there's 4 main ways that you can apply progressive overload. So the first obvious 2 are going to be more weight and more reps. If you're adding weight over time, if you're doing more reps over time with a given weight, then you're building muscle, then you're progressing, right? But 2 that are very overlooked is improving your technique and improving your form. If your form goes from, say, buddying 100 kilogram on a bent over row to being able to bent over row 100 kilogram very strict, then you've got to have gained that strength from somewhere, from your back muscles developing. Another one is similar to that. It's going to be exercise progressions. So going from, say, a kneeling push-up to a regular push-up to a weighted push-up, and progressively changing the exercise up if you can, or going from a bench dip to a bench dip with your feet elevated to a body weight dip or a weighted dip. These exercise progressions are a very good way for beginners to come into the gym and to go from being able to do almost nothing to being able to lift weights properly with good technique. Now we know how to progress. What do you actually do if progressions stop within the gym? There's a couple ways that we can go about this, because again, if you're not seeing progress over time, if you're going into the gym, not necessarily week to week, but month to month, and you're not seeing increases in weight on the bar, you're not doing more reps, then something needs to change. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. So something needs to change if you're not seeing progress over the course of multiple weeks or months. So what do we change? So within your training, volume and frequency are going to be 2 big ones. So volume's actually a bit of a weird one. Oftentimes people think that they need to add more and more volume in. They need to be, and obviously again, it goes back to doing the 500 kilogram deadlift thing. If we were just to add more volume over time, we would eventually get to like 100 sets of biceps per week, which you'd think more is better, but in a lot of cases it's not. Oftentimes, I recommend to people between 5 to 15 sets per week is going to be more than enough. So if you're already on, say, 5 sets and you're not seeing progress, then add a couple more sets. week to week. But once you get to say 15 or even 20, then it's time to maybe think about actually doing less volume and less work in the gym and allowing your body to recover properly. Because if you're doing too much volume, your body's not going to recover properly. You're not going to get the adaptations. You're going to cause too much muscle damage compared to muscle growth, and your body's not going to be fully recovered by the time you hit that muscle again. The next one turns into frequency, going from one time a week. Say you're hitting chest once a week, you might see some progress for some time doing that, but then that progress might stall out. You might hit maybe 15 sets of chest in one session, and that sounds like a ridiculous amount of sets to hit in one session, because it is. So you might want to add more frequency in there, which will allow you to do more high quality volume. So you can turn that 10, 15 sets of chest into 5 to 10 per session. So you might do 5 one session, 5 another session to get your 10 sets of chest per week. And being able to do 5 between sessions means you're going to get more first sets on the chest, which is going to allow you to get more quality stimulus to the chest and allow you to progress better. But also, it's going to allow you to recover better between sessions, because you're not causing a ridiculous amount of muscle damage within one session. It's more evenly spread out and balanced throughout the week. The next one to look at is nutrition. Obviously, main ones are going to be, are you actually eating enough calories to facilitate progressive overload? Because if you're not eating enough food before your sessions especially, then, or just around your session in general, then you're not going to be able to fuel your performance in that session. And if you can't fuel your performance, then you're not going to be able to actually apply progressions. And obviously after your session, so if you're not eating properly after a session, then you're not going to recover properly and you're not going to essentially grow properly. The main things that we want to look at are carbohydrate sources, or carbohydrate intake around your training session window. So we want to be having at least 30 to 40% of our carbs for the day before a session, 30 to 40% of our carbs for the day after the session. We don't want to have too many fats, because fats slow down your digestion, which is going to prevent those carbohydrates from getting to the muscles as quickly for fueling performance. And then obviously with protein intake, goes without being said, if you're having a good amount of protein before a session, after a session, if you have 4 meals a day, you want to split that protein intake up evenly throughout the day. And then that's going to mean that you're having adequate protein during your session, so that you're not breaking down as much muscle during your session, and then after your session you can get straight to recovering. And then the last point there is obviously going to be sleep. So and just recovery in general. If you're not already sleeping 7 hours a minimum a night, and I mean like 7 hours in bed, then you need to get your sleep in check, because if you're only sleeping 5 to 6 hours or spending 5 to 6 hours time in bed, then you're really hamstringing your performance and your progress long term. I remember like when I was in my first year of lifting and I wasn't seeing, and I would see progressions week to week when I first started out, but over time, around that maybe that 3 to 6 month mark, that started slowing down and I wasn't seeing these huge spikes in progression. I wasn't adding 5 to 10 kilograms to my lift every single week. And that kind of discouraged me. I thought something was wrong, but something you've actually got to understand is obviously as time goes on, your progressions are going to slow down. You're not going to be making those huge monumental progressions from week to week, and things are going to move a bit slower. You're going to have to look at the smaller wins within your session. So adding an extra rep or two, or adding 2.5 kilograms, and that is going to be more than adequate for progression and applying that stimulus. You want to start looking at the trends over months rather than weeks eventually, once you become more intermediate and advanced. What I like to focus on is one specific lift and see if that lift has improved in performance in 6 months' time. And then that's how I really know that I am actually progressing. It's a very delayed process. You're not always going to see immediate process, so you have to just trust what you're doing in the gym. And then obviously if you don't see progress on the lift, then you make adaptations to your plan from there, and you learn how your body works, and you learn what actually gets you that progress. So yeah, patience is key. You don't want to be expecting instant results here. It takes time, and you'll be a lot happier with the process, and you just allow things to progress slowly over time rather than trying to rush to the end. What are 5 very common mistakes that I see people make all the time with progressive overload? So the first thing is going to be hyperfixating on a few lifts. What a lot of people will do is they'll look at their bench press, especially the bench press, like a lot of guys, they'll look at their bench press and they'll look at it and they'll be like, I'm not progressing on this. But then on their chest press machine or their dumbbell press or their pec deck or their tricep pushdowns, they'll be seeing loads of progressions on these, maybe an extra rep every single week or extra weight every single week. And they'll be saying that their bench isn't progressing when it's just progressing slowly and it takes time for these multi-joint movements to progress. Another big mistake is putting too much stock in your compound lifts, which are heavily influenced by body weight. So using myself as an example right now, I am doing a fat loss phase for a photo shoot, and I've currently so far lost 5 kilograms of body weight. And of course my bench press is down. My bench press was at an estimated max of maybe 120 kilograms, but now it's down to about 110. And you'd be panicking saying that I'm not progressing, I'm not seeing progress. But if I look at things like my tricep pushdowns, my pec decks, my other presses, they're all still holding, if not getting better. So putting too much stock in compounds like squats and bench presses and pressing movements mainly, deadlifts are a little bit better, where you might actually be able to get more performance out of deadlift at lower body weights, just because your leverages kind of change to suit the deadlift more. Whereas an inch of change with your leverages on something like a squat or a bench press, that's going to make a massive, profound difference on your ability to move weights. So don't put too much stock in your compound lifts. Continue progressing them. Obviously, if they're going up over time, then fantastic. And especially if you're relatively the same, if not a lighter body weight, and you're benching more, you're squatting more, that definitely means that you have put on muscle. But focus on more single joint movements, things like hamstring curls, leg extensions, bicep curls, tricep pushdowns, lateral raises, pec decks. Movements that utilize a single joint because they're less affected by your leverages. So if you are to hold numbers or progress on numbers on one movement, on like a bicep curl, then you know that you've built muscle in your biceps. Whereas if you were to do that on a row or a chin up, then you don't know that you've built that muscle in your biceps. Another huge one is not logbooking your sessions. I don't know about you, but I don't have photographic memory. I don't have the best memory in the world. I can't remember what I had for breakfast some days, let alone what I did during a session a week ago. So if you're not logbooking your sessions, if you're not writing down, whether that's in a logbook, an app, in a spreadsheet, however you want to write it down, if you're not writing down your sessions, then you're not going to be able to effectively apply progressive overload. You're not going to be able to train as hard as you could because you're not able to reflect and look upon what you did in the past. You need to be logbooking your sessions if you want to apply progressive overload properly. Another one that's very commonly overlooked is actually changing your exercises too frequently. Too many times I'm talking to guys in the gym, especially the ones that don't logbook. They don't logbook and they change their exercises up every couple weeks, every week, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. They're doing a different pressing exercise because they're not seeing progress from week to week. Performing an exercise is almost like a skill that you get better at. You get these neuromuscular adaptations, which essentially is just becoming more efficient with an exercise, having better technique with an exercise. And if you're changing your exercises up too often, say every 2 to 4 weeks, you change an exercise, you're going to have to build those neuromuscular adaptations all over again for that exercise. And it actually gives you the illusion that you're progressing and you're building tons of muscle, when in reality, you're just getting better and more technically sound with the exercise. So in order to actually see long-term progress, you need to stick with the same exercises for months and months and months on end. If I'm, for example, myself right now, I'm doing my bench press. After my cut, I will stick to my bench press, and I will stick to my bench press for 6 months to a year, maybe even like longer than that, because over time I get better at my bench press, but my technique isn't improving that much. So if I do add any strength increases or rep increases on my bench press, I know it's because that I'm building muscle rather than just getting better at the bench press. And the final mistake that I very commonly see is not standardizing your technique within a session, within weeks. If you're again, doing a bent over row is a very common example, and you're only using more body English. You're moving the weight, you're swinging the weight more, you're using the hips, the hamstrings, the legs to get the weight moving more. You're using your core, your abs, just every muscle apart from the target muscle to get that weight moving, and you're adding weight and you're adding reps over time, but your form is getting sloppier. Then you're not progressing via building muscle, you're progressing by making the exercise easier. So what you need to do is you need to standardize your tempo, you need to standardize your execution of a movement over time, or that will give you a better indication of if you're actually building muscle versus just making an exercise easier. Now that you understand progressive overload, it's time to apply this to your own training and actually start making progress. If you found this video, then drop me a like, comment, and subscribe as usual. And if you want to take your training and nutrition to another level and your physique to another level, then check out the link in the description for an inquiry link to my coaching, where I can break all of this down and give you an actionable game plan for making progress long term. Now, go train with intent, track your progress, and get those gains made.